Hi, it's Andy with Mountain Computers, and I just want to go over motherboards today. So let's start out with our first motherboard. Motherboards come in all shapes and sizes. However, this one here is an old board. It's an LGA 775 socket. It's a red board. It's a P6 NGM model, MS7366 version 1.0. So for every employee that starts at Mountain Computers, one of the first things we do is when we're ordering parts is understand what board is needed to repair a computer. In my case, there's 3 or 4 that we choose. But let's go over the board components so that you understand what it takes to understand how to install a board, repair a computer, and help our customers get their computer back working again. So, first of all, on this board, as you can see, there's several components. So starting from top to bottom, left to right, this is the front header. And so on this, you'll see several places where you can connect components. The first one is the keyboard and mouse. Keyboard's purple, mouse is green. Next over, you'll have some video out, which is your DVI-D, SVGA. Next one over, you have your USB ports, and then an RJ45 for Ethernet. And then this is your audio header. The green is for audio out. The black is a surround. Blue is line in. Pink is audio in, which is from like a microphone. That's confuses people from time to time, is which one do I plug my speakers into? It's always the green one. If you have a surround sound system, you'll just have to follow your manual. The next part on the motherboard is the above board video connectors, or first of all, you have a PCI Express 1, PCI Express 16, and PCI. In the old days, you had AGP and a few other types of connectors. As you can see on this motherboard, you'll see capacitors. These are the ones that are sticking up that are flat. In this case, this motherboard has gone bad, and you can see the capacitors are bubbled out. It's hard to see, but from my angle, you can see that they're bubbled up. We're using this motherboard as an example. It's a demo. Moving around the board, you have the socket. That's where the CPU goes in. We talked about that in another session. This is LGA 775, which is now obsolete. After that, you actually have your RAM slots. In this case, we have 2. This is probably DDR2. I can see these capacitors here as well have bubbles on them. Moving over to the right-hand side of the board, you actually have, this is called the floppy connector. Here's your power connector. This is a 20 plus 4 pin connector. That used to be 20, then they added an extra 4. And then over on the other side of the board, you'll see an 8 or a 4 pin connector here. So this will come in for 8. The older boards are 4. The newer ones with additional power features will have 8. I'll show you a board here in a minute with that. Then you'll see your IDE adapter here. These are becoming obsolete. I think the most important thing on these boards is, like I told you, when it comes to a motherboard, it's the processor and the RAM. And between those 2 components, that can eat up a lot of your money. The board is fairly, inexpensive, just depending on what you're trying to do. Over here, you'll have your serial ATA adapters. There's 3 types of speeds. There's the old serial ATA 2, and serial ATA 3. With serial ATA 2, that's 3 gigabits per second, and then serial ATA 3, which is 6 gigabits per second. So you want to match up your hard drive and your connector, your cable, for the optimal speed here. You can see this little empty spot here. That's where the CMOS battery goes. So when the power's off, this battery keeps track of everything on this motherboard. Then you have what's called your front header, and the front header is right here. You can see these different colors. These are basically the connectors that go to your computer case, like the power switch, the reset switch, the power LEDs, the hard drive activity LEDs. And then over here you'll have actually more connectors. One of them will be your audio header. In this case I don't see that. These just look like USB 3. Additional USB 3 connectors for your front of your computer case. There's a communications port right here, COM port. That's for your serial. That's old school. And then there's a TPM adapter. And then you have different connectors on your motherboard for system fan. System fan, up here, the one that goes to the CPU, the heat sink that goes on top of it. This is the CPU fan power. And that's about it. That's just one board. Okay, so let's go to another board. Oh, before I go on, the back of the board, typically you'll have a label, serial number, model number, so not to worry. Basically an old board. So this one here is another board, it's a little bit more heavy duty. You can see that there's actually 6 RAM slots, probably DDR3 too. As far as model numbers go, this model number is a DX58M01. Probably an Intel board. As you can see, I was telling you about the 4-pin, 8-pin power connector. This is 8. Still this is 20 pin power. Standard header. Except this one's a little different. This has an E-serial ATA adapter for an external hard drive. And it's also got a FireWire port, EEE 1394 port. Then your standard header here, which the previous one was 3, this one's 6. This is for surround sound. I think that's what the case was on that one. No, these were both the same. You got some heat sinks here. Goes over components on the motherboard. Your serial ATA. These are colored for a reason. Some boards will come with RAID capabilities for redundant drive configurations, RAID 0, 1, 5, and 10. There's other RAID configurations, but those are the most common. Plus a JBOD configuration, which means just a bunch of disks. It's just the way you configure your hard drives that you connect to your motherboard. So that one's done. Let's try another one. Here's another motherboard. This one's an AMD. This is socket AM2. 2 RAM slots, 20 plus 4-pin connector. This one's got a floppy connector. This one's got your standard IDE connector. 6 serial ATAs, 2 PCI, 1 PCI Express 1, 1 PCI Express 16. There are PCI Express 4/8s out there somehow. That's your CMOS battery that's missing. This is another DIP board that's dead. Bunch of capacitors here. On the board you'll see different components. Standard header again, this is 6. Another FireWire port, SVGA, DVI-D. Your PS2 connectors, purple again is keyboard, green is mouse. Your USB ports. These are USB 2, USB 1.1. That'll step down. That's about it for that board. Now we got another board here. This board here is a little more interesting. This one's already got components installed on it. This is an AMD board. This is an AMD heatsink and CPU fan. You can see it's connected. It's got your DDR3 RAM. It's got your 20 plus 4-pin power connector. It's got a speaker connected. It's got an above board video card. This one here, the audio is chopped down, so you only have your audio out, your audio in, and your line in, line out. Just an SVGA, but it also has an HDMI video adapter. USB 3, that's the blue connectors. The other ones are black. Those are usually USB 2.0 and 1.1. This one here is an A6 8HM E33V2 MSI board. Basically, you'll have, in this case, you'll have a video header here and here. This is an above board video card. It's just on a PCI slot. It's not an actual PCI Express 16 video. But how that works is usually when one is plugged in, the others are turned off automatically and vice versa. So if this is missing, then the onboard video header will work. But this is another board example of what you can do. Telling you about motherboard pricing. AMD, Intel. Those are 2 different types of boards that we have. And then the RAM and the CPUs that go in them, those prices will vary, and I'll cover that in another segment. But I got to go for a second, and there will be more to come.